Hello, I'm here with you today to talk about Bolt, the free business plan compiler. It's a mobile app and it's available to you at boltplanner.com. So I am going to tell you how to get the app, tell you how to install it, how it's used, and how you compile your and share your business plan once you have entered all the necessary information. So I'll go through each of these things in turn, but there's a few housekeeping items, necessary background to share with you first. So Bolt is brought to you by the Vermont Forest Business School and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. My name is Steve Beck, and I am the owner and director of the Vermont Forest Business School. And from time to time, we put out these free mobile apps that we think will be useful in the forest products community. One of my favorite work partners is the Wisconsin DNR. So when I had this project and I wanted to find a way to kind of get it out farther and wider, I teamed up with the good folks at Wisconsin DNR. The funding for this app is primarily from Farm Credit East Ag Enhancement Grant Program. I can't say enough good things about this program. They support their members, the people that they lend to, people in the rural working landscape of the Northeast. And so from time to time, I'll go to them with a project and they'll put the necessary funding behind it to make it happen. Now, Wisconsin DNR also received some funding from the USDA Forest Services Wood Innovations. And as a result of that, I'm required to include this statement and to make sure that you know that in accordance with federal law and the U.S. Department of Agricultural's policy, this institution is prohibited from discriminating on the basis of race, sex, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability. Not all prohibited bases apply to all programs. So if for some reason you had a reason to file a complaint, all the necessary contact information is there on the screen, and I'll pause briefly in case you need to note any of it. Okay, now on to the Bolt app. So this is a mobile app. It's a mobile website. Find it uh, on the Google Play Store or on the iPhone store. Instead, you can just go to the website. So there's a dedicated website, www.boltplanner.com. And if you go there, this will take you to one of my websites where I post a lot of resources that I make available. And it will bring you to a link that will pull this up and allow you to use it on your phone and install it. I do want to note that as a mobile app, it's formatted for use on a phone. We thought that that would be the most convenient way to distribute it, but it will work just fine on a desktop. So you can open this up on your desktop in a browser and use it as well. It's a mobile web page, and as such, there is storage enabled. So if you want to keep it open, work on it for a little while, and come back to it, all your information will be saved. In terms of installing this on a phone, on either an iPhone or an Android, so we'll start with an iPhone. If you press the share button with this website open and you scroll down, one of your choices is add to home screen. And if you do that, it will put an icon for Bolt on your home screen somewhere and you can pull it up at any time. And it's actually maybe a little bit more straightforward on Android. You're going to be in your little Chrome browser, and if you hit the three dots for settings and look at the list, one is add to home screen. So if you do that, you will have an icon and the web page will in fact be resident on your phone. Let's turn now on how to use Bolt to create a business plan. So when you open Bolt, you'll notice that there are a list of items below the icon, and that you can go to any one of them and it'll open up a worksheet. Now, it really, it doesn't matter what order you do things in. I'm just going to present them in the sequence they're there. And the first choice you have is instructions. And if you go to that, there are some general instructions, things like, hey, the white cells are meant for you to input data and so on. In some cases, calculations uh, are made automatically for you. And if you scroll down under the general instructions, there are a set of instructions specific to each of the tabs, each of the items that make up the business plan. So if you're wondering what you're supposed to do there and aren't sure, scroll down here, you will find an item and it will tell you what to do. I'm going to go page by page through this so you can see each of the things that you need to add. The first area where you'll actually do any inputting is under general information. And this is going to ask you for things like what type of business you have and that sort of thing. So you're going to want to fill that in. This is mostly going to be things like the type of business, your contact information, social media, phone, etc. You'll be given a choice of, hey, is this a new business? This is a startup business. And then the reason for the business plan. There are a number of reasons you might write a business plan. In most cases, small businesses in forestry and the wood products world will write a business plan when someone makes them do it, right? You might be applying for a grant that requires a business plan. Perhaps you are applying for financing and your lender wants you to explain the business in ways that they will understand it. That you will pick from, and then it will tell you, it will ask you actually specific business plan goals. Why are you doing this? I am doing this to obtain financing. I'm doing this to clarify my intentions for the business and so on. The beauty of writing the business plan is it forces you to answer questions about your business that you may not even have thought of. And in fact, many people start a business because they're good at the work and they figure it out as they go along. And there's nothing wrong with that. But going through this exercise of writing a business plan will force you to think about some things that you're going to have to think about sooner or later. This just might get you thinking about those things sooner. The last thing, general information, is a brief history of the business if it exists already, or if it's a new business, maybe what was it that led you to that point of starting the business. Next, we will turn to experience. And this is the opportunity for you to tell everyone who's going to read this plan, what your experience is, both in the business you're starting, experience in this business type, but then in other general areas that are important to being in small business. For example, you will fill in any supervisory experience. I'd encourage you to think hard about any time you were in charge of other people and had those responsibilities. No matter that it's something you didn't think was very important at the time, make sure to put it in the plan. Experience in relevant repairs and maintenance, financial management experience, and then other experience. Suppose you were in the military for a few years before you started your business. Then you've got great experience that you should share in the business plan. This is your place to do it. The next section you're going to talk about is staffing. And in staffing, you're going to explain all the people that you might need to hire in the business and what their roles are going to be. So there are half a dozen or so sections in which you will list a job title and then state the experience, responsibilities, and the number of people doing them. And, if you're going to be a sole proprietor and work for yourself, well, then maybe you've only got one entry. And if you're going to have to hire multiple people, say for a logging crew or a sawmill or something like that, then you're going to have to fill in more of those things. So talk about what you're going to call that person. That's maybe the less important thing. The more important thing is the experience, responsibilities, and the number of each person that you're going to have there. Now, in coming up with this app, it's a little bit of a challenge to make sure it is big enough to handle any size business, and yet small enough so that if you're a sole proprietor, you're not intimidated by it. You're thinking, oh boy, I need answers to these questions. Well, there are some questions you're not going to have answers for because your business is is mercifully really simple, and that's fine too. So don't worry about it if you're not filling all the blanks, especially when it comes to experience and job titles. The next section after staffing is the narrative. Now, this is the next section because it is what will be shown next in your business plan. However, my suggestion to you is to wait and write this narrative last. After you've gone through all the other things, you've got all that information in your head, you've had to write it all down or enter it all, and that will help you produce the narrative. So it's only in this order. I'm presenting everything in the order in which it appears in the business plan itself. You can do things in any order. I'd suggest the narrative is what you want to come up with last. So you'll use this narrative to describe the business and how it creates revenue from products and or services. The story of how you will operate and what will distinguish you from other businesses that are in that sector. The next section, which may or may not apply to you, but I wanted to include it, is how you will adapt to changes in the climate. Let's face it, in the forestry and wood products world, we have seen a significant amount of change, particularly if you've been around for as long as I have, I guess, but we are seeing differences in seasonal temperature and moisture patterns in the forest product supply chain. I'd say this manifests itself largely in different soil moisture patterns that impact our supply chain. They impact the number of days available for you to work sustainably if you're a logger. If you are a mill, it changes the way that you procure logs, and it might shorten the season you have to do that. So, and if you've got to arrange for trucking and all that, often the upshot is a shorter, more compressed season. How will you adapt to that? Here's your chance to put it in there. And this may be important to you if you are looking at various programs related to climate that might offer some assistance to your business. All right, moving on. The next section in the business plan is SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it just asks you for a paragraph on each of these things. One of the beauties of this mobile app is that you can click on the entry area, and if you don't feel like typing it with your thumbs, you can speak it in. You can use the microphone and get it there. Now, you may need to do some editing. That's never quite perfect when we speak to text, but that's one way of doing it. So strengths, most people know their strengths and what they have going for them that will help them in the business. Weaknesses, though, we often struggle to mention and note our weaknesses. And if you haven't thought about that, think about areas where you need to improve. It's okay to admit them, and writing them down is as good as a commitment to make yourself get better at those things. Opportunities. Surely you have seen an opportunity if you're going to start a business. So write those down and make those explicit to other people who are trying to learn about your business by reading your business plan. And then threats. What are the things that could change that you might worry about? I'd suggest you do something rather than worry, because worry is not a productive use of your imagination. But, excuse me, what are the potential threats to your business? Get all those in there, and that will add to your plan. Next, we come to the very practical matter of financing. So, in this section, you might mention it if you're a startup business or if you're looking for a loan. There's a drop-down menu, and then you will list all the itemized costs involved in the business and each item, what they're going to cost you, and that will tell you the total acquisition cost. What do you need for a startup or for an expansion or to grow your business? And also, let's not neglect operating funds. Chances are, if you're just starting up or you're starting a new division or something, a new enterprise in an existing business, you need some money to cover payroll and expenses before revenue starts to come in. If you're fortunate enough to have a business where revenue comes in almost immediately, great, but there are other things where it might take a while. So you'll have acquisition costs, operating funds. Summing these gives you total costs. And then you start to explain to whoever's reading this, where's that money coming from? Maybe it's cash on hand. If everything you need is in the cash on hand, super. But if not, the difference between total cost and your cash on hand is the financed amount. Where do you need to borrow money? How much do you need to borrow? And then it asks you to list funding sources. I think there are up to four. You list the funding source and the amount, and then explain the uses. Now, if you're applying for a loan from a particular institution, and they're the ones reading this, this is it's still, hopeful on your part, but you're going to put down the name of that institution, the amount you're seeking to borrow, and how you're going to use the money. You might say, hey, I'm going to keep my cash on hand for operating funds, but I need the loan amount to buy some equipment and some supplies and things along that line. Next, staying with this financing topic is the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is a bit easier to do if you're an established business because you have records for your last year and this year. And in that way, you can show that comparison and show how some growth has occurred. But you're going to be asked, the date, the year, the prior year will be the current year less one, and that will be filled in automatically for you. So the one in my example is 2003, the current year 2023 is the prior year, 2024 is the current year, and it's going to ask you for your assets, cash, accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, inventory, and so on, property and equipment. And then the other side of that is liability, things that you owe, accounts payable, accrued expenses, unearned revenue, and so on, long-term debt and other long-term liabilities, and then owner's equity, investment, retained earnings, and so on. So when this is all added up, the balance should be zero. One should balance the other, and you'll see a difference from one year to the next. The balance line at the bottom tells you whether you've reached a balance or not. And if the number you're going to want to correct your inputs into the balance equals zero. This is often done by just adjusting the value of the investment capital and the assets. If you are a startup business, you will probably not have a balance sheet because you don't have last year's records to go through. I'd suggest you put it in your projections for the first year. Next, we want to look at 3-year cash flow projections. If you're starting a business, if you are expanding a business, then you're doing it with the expectation that you're going to bring some revenue in, right? So we're going to demonstrate this as best we can in these cash flow. And so it will ask you for revenue, the source, and the amount. There are a number of lines here. So, it could be part products, could be part services, and so on. And then it will ask you, hey, how much are your loan payments, labor, fuel, insurance, repairs and maintenance, work supplies, work truck, outside trucking, depreciation, wood inputs, owner salary, and then other items. As much as I try to think of anything you might think you might need, probably there are some things I haven't. So don't worry about that. You just add the name of the item and add the cost. That will tell you your total cost. So your year one cash flow will just show the difference between these things and a year one profit or loss. Now, ideally, in a business plan, you are going to show some progress from year one to year two. Maybe the expenses are largely the same, but the income grows, more revenue comes in. And so in a perfect world, you're going to show profits going up. Now, as a matter of convenience, what I've done is shown when you go to enter your year two inputs, you'll see the previous years to the right, sort of as a guideline to help you in that. All right, so once you've got all that in, you're a long way towards getting this business plan done. The next item is the work schedule. And if I didn't show that, I want to show it briefly now. Cash flow projections, you'll get 3 different years that look like what I'm showing you here. But then we'll move on to the schedule. If the narrative goes last, this probably goes second from last. And if you have a business plan, if you're starting a business or going to do something, there are some steps you need to take, some actions to make it happen. So this is asking you to list those items and then just list if their priority is high, medium, or low, and a completion date. I really believe that forcing yourself to think about the priorities and then listing a completion date kicks this off and gets it in motion. You have an intention to finish something by a certain amount of time, and seeing that in a printed or a formatted copy sort of makes it real, right? So your work item, if you're going to do something, if you're making a plan, it means you're going to execute. So the schedule is really important, and it does demonstrate to lenders and others that, hey, you thought about how you're going to put everything in motion. One thing I added to this that is not part of the business plan, but it's a handy little calculator, is this loan calculator. So this is not part of the plan. You don't need to use this, but if you want to use it, you can look at a loan amount, a principal, an interest rate, term, and years, number of payments per year, and it will tell you the monthly payments and the number of payments and the annual payments as well as the cumulative interest. This is kind of a handy thing to use by way of comparison. You might look at the difference between different interest rates or terms, see how they impact both cash flow and your total payout over time. So that's just a handy thing that I included there. I'm bad to do this in one fell swoop. But once you are ready to do it, there are a number of ways to print or save it. And uh, I want to touch on these now. So let's see. If you're using a desktop browser, you simply go to the print or save report tab and print a hard copy or PDF version of the report. You can send it to your printer if you're on a desktop. It's easy to do. Or that option in a browser often says save as a PDF, and then you will just tell it where to save it and what the name's going to be. I really recommend the PDF saving because you could do so many. You could print a hard copy later if you need to, but you can also email it to somebody or send it by some other means. And if you're working on your phone uh, with, if you've got an iOS system and an iPhone, if you're working on that, go to Print or Save Report tab in the app, okay, and then choose the Share button. Okay, the Share button lets you do a number of things. Then you're going to press the options button to prompt a list of choices for sending the report. So choose PDF. The default is automatic, but you're going to have to choose PDF. It's usually second on that list. Then you can choose to text or email the file. In most cases, you're going to first email this PDF file to yourself, and then you'll have it and can do whatever with it. Similar situation if you've got an Android phone. If you're working on Android, you go to the Print or Save Report tab that we'll look at next in the app itself, and then press on the three vertical dots at the top right corner of the Chrome browser. A drop-down menu is going to appear. Tap on the Share option. Okay, when you do this, a pop-up menu will appear. Select the print option from the list of choices, and in the top right corner, there's going to be an arrow. Tap that arrow and then select Save as a PDF. Check that option. Choose any of the PDF options you prefer, and then choose Save at the end of the page. You can then rename the file, change the file location, or any of those things. So that's just an explanation built into the app of how you do it, because it is a little bit tricky. To actually do it, you go to the Print or Save Report. It's going to look like this. You'll actually see the business plan there at that tab, and you can scroll down and you'll notice that nice blue background color is gone. It's all black and white. It's meant to be printer friendly. So if you scroll down through, you'll see your whole plan is filled in there, and then you'll do what we talked about before. You will print it, from a desktop, easy to print a hard copy or PDF. Android and iOS, a little bit more to it, but you're going to use your Share button to get to a point, and I strongly recommend that you save it as a PDF, send it to yourself, and then you have it. So that's been a quick look at BOLT, the business compiler. BOLT, by the way, stands for Business Organization, Leadership, and Trade. I wanted to have a good acronym. That's kind of what I came up with. Again, this is a free mobile app. I encourage you to get it, put it on your phone, use it, share it with anyone you want, post a link to it on your website. It is meant to be used. Again, thanks to the good people at Farm Credit East Ag Enhancement for putting almost all of the financial support needed to make this happen, and to Wisconsin DNR for partnering on this with me and bringing some Forest Service involvement as well. So that's the BOLT app. And just a quick word while I have the opportunity, a little bit more about the Vermont Forest Business School. If you're not spending your time doing what you want, and you're not earning and you're not learning, well, what the heck are you doing? And that's some wisdom from a guy named Val Ravikant. So if you've got time to learn, this might be a great opportunity for you. The Vermont Forest Business School, you can learn more about it at vts.com, is something I started primarily to provide a learning environment, a cohort-style learning environment of 6 months for mid-career small business owners in forestry, wood products, and in general, the working landscape. So that's mostly what we do. We meet for 6 months. I really like to have experienced people that have a long way to go in their career still, and this program helps to make good people better. I also do some other things in this program from time to time, some short courses and these apps and so on. But if you want to learn more, vtfbs.com is where you will do it. So again, BOLT, the business plan compiler, free app, boltplanner.com. And I thank you for listening to this today.